KoitCast. Today's guest is MUFON State Director of Southern California and is an executive member of MUFON's Experiencer Resource Team. He teaches an accredited course in ufology at the Otis College of Art and Design in Los Angeles and is also known as a singer, songwriter, guitarist. Please give a massive Koit welcome to Earl Grey Anderson. And now a quick request from me before the interview begins. Please can I ask you all to subscribe to this channel. It's very important as it helps me to attract new guests and to help this channel grow. Please also like, share the content and also comment on the videos. All these interactions will help my channel grow. Thank you ever so much. And now, over to the interview. Hi Earl, welcome to KoitCast.
Hi there, how are you doing?
Today I am super lush and I hope you are too. I hope so anyway. That didn't look like a positive, did it, Earl?
No, I'm not sure what lush
good.
The British nomenclature there is. I know a lot of British, but I don't know that one.
Okay, I'm going with the Bristolian of lush, which is good. Really nice.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
We are certainly lush today. Here it kind of means that you've been drinking a bit too much, so it's a little early.
Yeah. We won't go there, will we?
No.
Okay.
If you recorded me tonight, it might have a couple beers on the way, but not this time of
not this early for you. Yeah, that's just a cocktail. He said it was water, but it's a cocktail.
It's water. It's pure vodka, of course.
Yeah, obviously. Let's start with the old quality one. We always ask everyone, who are you, where you're from, etc.
Sure. Well, I'm a native of Los Angeles. My name is Earl Grey Anderson. The gray part is a pseudonym, goes back to my music background. Singer-songwriter, sort of beating my head against the music industry in Los Angeles for many years. There's a lot of us, I think, probably out there with that story. But, Earl Anderson, I remember one incident where a guy, they messed up the marquee at one club. There was another guy, Carl Anderson, who was the R&B singer in Jesus Christ Superstar. He played Judas. And he had his little following. And so they mixed up the marquee. So I was playing that night, but it said Carl Anderson. So I get there to the gig and all this group files in that's kind of expecting, R&B rave ups. And there I am with my little acoustic guitar. Back then I did kind of, James Taylor / Dan Fogelberg / Carole King kind of singer-songwriter stuff. So it's like, oh God, what am I going to do with this? And I went out there like a trooper, and it went pretty well. It went, nobody went and asked for their money back or anything. It was, a mistake, but I didn't want that to happen again. So I was, fishing through the cupboard, and there was a box of Earl Grey tea, and it was kind of, bing, it was like the little light bulb. Now that was 1988, 89. It's like around December 88, I guess. So I've been Earl Grey for a long time. My grandchildren call me Earl Grey, for goodness sakes. So it kind of stuck. So I was kind of, when I went and became a UFO investigator, which I'm guessing that's probably the main reason why you're having me on your show.
No, I just like talking about tea.
Okay, we can talk tea. Never touch. I like coffee. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell the Crown.
Don't tell the English either.
No, I like a nice tea break actually. But anyway. I just kind of kept the gray in there and just put my actual, last name Anderson at the end. So Earl Grey Anderson, it works because of, the little gray aliens with the black eyes and stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't want to take yourself too seriously in any field, I think. Even if you're, I think, a nuclear engineer or something, you still have to have a little tongue in cheek and a little sense of humor, and especially in this field that I'm in now, because you encounter some very weird stuff. Um,
Very much so. Hey, I was wondering, you know, obviously your name came from literally a box of tea,
it
help
did.
differentiate you between
Mystery is
somebody
all.
else. I thought you were going to say it was from Star Trek, you know, like because Captain
No,
Picard liked the tea, but you
to
know.
my chagrin. Now I was going around, advertising around town as Earl Grey, and then Star Trek: The Next Generation comes out, and there's Captain Picard going, "Earl Grey hot," and it's kind of like, oh God, everybody's going to think that I just lifted that from Star Trek, but no, I had it first,
He
and there
came
was
to one of your
actually,
shows, didn't he? Yeah.
yeah, there was. Well, yeah, ironically, I'm kind of working with Star Trek: The Next Generation's old CGI guy.
Ah.
He does videos, uh, true to life videos, very detailed about people's personal encounters with this phenomenon. And he does beautiful CGI work. You can see his work if you go to YouTube. It says "Breaking the Silence" is the name of their group.
I will write that down
But
and look it up.
yeah, but how interesting. I mean, he actually did a video of my. I had an anomalous encounter 10 years ago, my wife and I. You probably going to ask about that.
I will
Um,
ask about that. Yeah, it's on my
yeah.
list. Put it that way.
And Steve, he did a video. It's just like 12 minutes, but he really did capture the gist and the feel. And, it's very difficult to capture something like that because you're sort of, they call it the Oz effect. When you have an experience that involves these beings and this phenomenon, they sort of take the set and setting, and then they sort of run the narrative. It's quite dramatic. It's not. It's not like turning on. It's not like going to the corner and buying a carton of cigarettes or milk or whatever. It's very, very strange. But he captures that feel. And anyway,
No, that's quality because it reminds me of like the police sketch artists, the same sort of thing. You know how
oh,
they can turn nothing into almost exactly
well,
what you saw.
yes, he's very detail oriented. I'm actually kind of doing some work with them, being a resource person for the witness, telling these personal stories, whether it's having a close encounter with a UFO or being abducted.
Mm.
It's very personal, and people get emotional, and there's a fear factor there sometimes, and people are left with PTSD. Ontological shock is the actual term for that. uh, it pulls all of your previous ideas of life and what it means and what reality is out from under you, and you're sort of left there weightless. And
Mm.
it really helps to have somebody that's there that understands this phenomenon, that can listen and be there as a support person. So I kind of do that for Steve, with his at his studio here in Ventura County, and I'm proud to work with him. I've worked with other people in the past, and I feel happy to be able to take my expertise, whatever, I mean, there's a learning curve to this stuff. And in my since I've been doing this, it's been about a little over 10 years now. I've personally investigated over 1,000 cases. That not doesn't mean like reading the case and taking notes. I mean, this in-depth interview with the witnesses and going to the site where they saw something, and
All right.
and
Well, let's
taking
get
theodolite
into
photos.
let's get into all that. But before we
Sure.
jump into it, would you mind?
I know.
Um,
I
that's
raced to
okay.
the
You
race to the
raced to the
finish line there,
punchline.
but yeah.
Would you mind sending me a link when you've got a moment to your experience as CGI'd by Steve if it's online anywhere?
Sure,
That would
I'd
be
be happy
amazing.
to do that. I may have
So
to
I'll
go
link it in the
retrieve mine.
description.
Do you want me to do it during
No,
this, or I
later.
can? Yeah,
No,
okay.
later.
Yeah,
Later. Yeah, no,
I'll
no,
shoot
no
that
rush.
off to you.
Super.
Yes,
All right, thank you.
when we're
Okay,
finished.
let's dive into MUFON then. With
Certainly.
your initiation. So, how did you get involved? Where did you start your journey?
Wow. All right. Well, you want to go back to childhood because that's where it starts for me.
Yes, let's do it.
Um, well, when I was about, some of my earliest memories were from Venice, California. My mom had worked for, during the 1950s. She had been born in Muscatine, Iowa, kind of a rural town, but she actually was deputized into the police department because they needed somebody to watch over the drunk tank over the weekends,
Nice.
bring them their food and make sure everybody was okay. And that was my mom. Everybody knew her. They kind of loved her in town. She was a bubbly person. And so kind of out of the blue and very, I don't know how often they would deputize women back then, but my mom was deputized as a sheriff, so she could do this for them. It's her first real job. She moved to Southern California back around 1952, 53. And she went for a job interview, a secretarial job. And it happened to be for Howard Hughes, the millionaire Howard Hughes, aviator, oil baron, designed the Better Oil bit and kind of made his fortune around that. So that was my mom's job. Everybody knew about this. She was kind of proud of that. So it was no secret. There's nothing secretive about that whatsoever. I've met other people whose parents had worked for Hughes aircraft, actually. But I had this funny habit when I was a little child. I used to climb up. We had monkey bars in our backyard that my dad had. He was pretty good with woodworking and stuff. And I would climb up to the top and I would sing and I would wave at the sky. Now, little kids, 3-4 years old, they're fantasy minded, and that delineation between fantasy and reality is kind of thin when you're a young one like that.
Yeah.
But I guess it got my mom's attention. And I remember distinctly her opening the kitchen window and going, "Earl, who are you waving and singing to up there? Birds, God, what?" And without any preamble, without any thought, I answered her, "The space people, Mom. I'm waving and I'm singing to the space people." I don't know where this concept came from. I don't know. I don't, Star Trek wasn't on television yet back in 1962. But for some reason, this was this repeated activity. And I think that it made my mom tell me what she wasn't supposed to talk about. Because 1963, I'd sat down for breakfast one morning. My mom was across from my bowl of cornflakes. And she starts talking, and it really got my attention because she spoke to me like I was another adult. It was almost trance-like the way that she spoke to me. She said, "Son, well, you know that I worked for Hughes and all that, and that's no secret, but there is something very unusual about my job. And I think that you might be interested in what I used to do." And she talked about how she was sent out to the middle of nowhere. Those were her words. I have a good memory, thankfully. One thing I have. But she said, they took me out to the middle of nowhere with a little security detail. It was 2 security guys. She said it was the desert and you couldn't see anything interesting there. It was just the desert. And there was one small, a shack, a bunker, she said. Well, they took me to this bunker and I wondered if they're going to show me a tractor or what could possibly, oil drilling machinery, what could be there. They opened this thing up and she said there was an elevator at the back of this shack. And that was the only thing in there. And of course, it only went down. There wasn't an upstairs to this thing. So she got into this elevator. They still hadn't explained to her what this was all about. But she said that the elevator doors closed. It started moving. She thought maybe it would go a floor or two. And then she got scared. She said, "I felt butterflies in my stomach because that elevator was going really quickly." And she said a mile under, it stopped and the doors opened up. And there was a little city underneath the desert. She said that they would get around in golf carts. A lot of German rocket scientists worked there. She mentioned Werner von Braun at one
Oh,
point.
crikey, yeah.
Yeah, she mentioned him sort of like he was a friend. She said, well, Werner, he would be on the Disney show back then.
That's right, yeah.
Wonderful World of Disney. And she would say, that was my friend Werner. He was a charming man. She said, he called me Betty Grace, which was her first and her middle name put together. Her name was Betty Grace Maiden. Here's a picture of my mom, by the way. So you got a little visual aid.
Oh, yeah, cool.
And that's right around that time period, 1952, 53. So she said that there were German rocket scientists that worked there. She said that they were working on highly secretive projects. She said that they had like a movie theater there, that people spent time a mile under the desert. It wasn't like they went home at the end of the shift. She said they had, there was a barber shop, but the guy could do my hair for me. And later on, I'm thinking, all right, she must have spent some time down there, because you don't go a mile under the desert to have your hair permed.
Of course not. That's a
apparently
there sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And she mentioned how there was a little cafe that they had with little yellow umbrellas, like a French cafe. And she said that this made me laugh because you don't need an umbrella in a cave. But I guess they were trying to make people feel comfortable down there. So she kind of wrapped up her talk with me. It's maybe 10 minutes max, that this story she told me, this crazy story. And she said, well, Earl, I see that you go and you climb up the monkey bars, and you wave and you sing to the space people. And I thought you should know there actually are space people. We know this, that we're not alone in the universe. They knew it back, when I worked there. And so there are space people. And now it's time to go to school. Here's your lunch. And, and I went to school and didn't think much about it. Because little kids, again, you have a propensity for, kind of accepting what your parents tell you as being true. Well, I kind of lived with that information for some years. And once in a while, something would come up. She would talk about having worked on the Redstone rocketry program, that she was proud of that. And she spoke of certain astronauts as though she'd known them personally, but didn't really give any explanation, as like a work thing. Now, 5 years went by, and I was going to grammar school, fourth grade, which, I was 10 years old at the time, 1968. And we had a show and tell thing that we did on Fridays. And a lot of the kids were coming up. The topic was, what do your parents do? And a lot of the kids' fathers were working on the Apollo program. We had Rocketdyne over here where I live now. Is not that far away from where I grew up. A lot of the kids' fathers were working on the early rocket program for NASA. And I go up there and I'm talking about my father's landscaping business. And kids were kind of yawning. So then something possessed me. I was ready to go back to my desk. And then I said, let me tell you about my mom's old job. And I repeated verbatim what I just told you, what my mom said over that bowl of cornflakes. The kids kind of teased me about it. They'd put the little antenna behind my head and go, Spacey Earl. And I guess that my teacher was concerned that I had gone up there and I had told this crazy story about my mom. And the kids were kind of being, kind of teasing me over it. So she scheduled a parent-teacher conference. And I was playing in the playground waiting for mom. It was after the regular school hours. I was probably climbing up the monkey bars and waving and singing to the space people. Yeah, probably. I don't know. I don't know if I was doing that publicly. But anyway, my mom gets out of this meeting and she's very quiet. And my mom was usually kind of bubbly and talkative, but this time, no. She's walking silently back to the car with me. And we get to the car and she opens up the passenger door and she said, son, you didn't lie to your class and I didn't lie to you. And, but I had to tell your teacher that you have a very, very good imagination. And I'll tell you why. She closes the door and she gets in and she starts the car up. She's getting ready to drive. She said, son, I wasn't supposed to tell you what I told you. In fact, I signed documents that said I would never, ever talk about this. And she said, you were just a baby. How did you remember that? You know, and I think I got a little incensed. I said, well, I was 5. I wasn't a baby. And she said, no, you were just a baby. And she said, son, you can't ever talk about this again because people do not know about little cities under the desert. And they certainly don't know about intelligent life in the universe. She said, your mother could get into horrible trouble if you talk about this. Now she's trying to drive at this point, but she keeps looking at me and, you know, there was concern, which I wasn't used to seeing from my mom. She said, son, I could go to prison if you talk about this again. So don't ever talk about it, not to students, not to anybody. And I didn't. But, you know, I grew up having that little bit of information that most people don't have, that they had her sign non-disclosure agreements over. And that'll change a person. That'll change the path that you take in life, because it's extraordinary information. Later on, for some reason, my mom got talkative. It was around 1977. And I don't think the subject had really come up again until then, but I took her to see Star Wars. My mom went to her doctor, had a clean cancer screening. She had a problem with recurring cancers after having worked in an underground base. And now I find out, well, that's kind of a thing. All those early people, that was a problem. A lot of them had recurring non-metastatic cancers. And my mom had that issue. So I think it was related, and she knew it was related to her old job, but she had a clean cancer screening. She was in a good mood. We went to see the film, and at the end of the film, the curtains are closing, and my mom starts talking, and she's saying, son, you have no idea how close to the truth that movie actually is. She said, Star Wars is not far-fetched. She said, the different spacecraft, the different beings, all that. It's really like that. But they're never going to tell the public, son. She said they'll never tell the public in a million years. But she said it's realer than you'll ever know, son. And being a cocky teenager at that point, I was old enough to start questioning her. It was like, well, Mom, why the hell not? That's an important piece of information. I mean, that's one of the, you know, is there a God? You know, what happens to me when I die? And are we alone in the universe? It's like one of those 3. Why wouldn't they tell the public? And she started talking again, but it sounded like she was repeating something that she was told. She mentioned Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio broadcast and how people had overreacted to it, that they thought that it was really, that we were under attack
at the time,
the movie Mars Attacks, you know, Tim Burton's old film, but people were taking it seriously, and they were barricading their families in the basement with shotguns, and they were, you know, pulling their money out of their bank accounts. It scared people. And my mom said, imagine if that happened worldwide, it would be utter chaos. So they're never going to tell people, and it could harm world religions. It could harm the banking systems. It's just, they're never going to tell the public, son, but it's realer than you'll ever know. She said that a second time, which stuck with me. It bothered me. You know, it's an inquisitive little guy. You know,
well, it would,
like,
wouldn't it?
Well, I want to know.
You want to pull on that thread constantly.
Yes. So anyway, you know, I went on with life. I went and I went into pre-seminary classes. You know, I thought maybe I would be a pastor or something when I got older, and I was kind of going on that course. And in my mind, there wasn't really room for angels, God, and aliens. It kind of, and now I have no problem with that. But there seemed to be sort of a prejudice out there with that concept among Christian circles. So it was sort of an inconvenient truth that I was living with, and I sort of conveniently pushed that away for a while. But when my mom passed away, it was 1999. I'd gone on. I didn't become a minister. I became a nurse, a licensed nurse, and I was 40 years behind the stethoscope. So I went and I moved in with my mom. I was caring for her, and she did get so that she talked a little bit on her deathbed again. She doubled down on having worked under the desert. At this point, up until my mom died, she was working as a headhunter for all the major aerospace companies, for Northrop, Lockheed, Boeing, TRW. Those were all her contracts. Raytheon, military industrial complex. That was my mom's employer, pretty much.
Okay.
And my mom bragged about, well, I still have all my security clearances, and they're high security clearances. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of what I do, proud of what I've done. I'd do it all over again, son. I wanted her to go public and to sue officialdom because I felt they had exposed her to these carcinogenic materials. Whatever it was causing these recurring cancers. Again, they weren't metastasized cancers. It's like they would, she had a, double mastectomy, and then it came back somewhere else, and then somewhere else. And, her doctor more or less said, well, it seems like your mom was irradiated. And my mom's reaction to this was, son, I would never, ever sue my government. It was like abhorrent to her. She said, I'm very proud of what I did. I knew there were risks involved, like a soldier knows there are risks involved, and I would do it all over again, son. And so, no, I will not find a lawyer and sue these guys. And a week after that, my mom had passed away. And there I was, I was in my late sort of mid 40s, like 46 or so at that point, with this 50-foot tall golden question mark still hovering over my head about my mom and her work, and there was no golden ticket coming. My mom was gone. There was nobody that I knew that I could ask. And that's when I heard about MUFON. MUFON is a mutual UFO network.
Yeah.
They opened doors in 1969 after the Air Force's official investigation into the phenomenon, which was actually kind of a, they were trying to make it go away. They had Dr. J. Allen Hynek at the helm of their project, an astronomer, hoping that he would say, well, all this is nothing but swamp gas and hillbillies, seeing, Venus and thinking it's aliens. But a funny thing happened with Dr. Hynek. He found out that there's a there there. There really are UFOs. This is an actual phenomenon. And I can't blame all this on swamp gas. And the Air Force was not happy about this. They shut that program down, 1969. And that's when MUFON opened up their doors, same year. We've been doing the Air Force's job ever since, actually. And interestingly enough, we've been called in to speak to congressional members, speaking to congressional members in a skiff, which is, where, spies and stuff. I mean, you have to go and have high security clearances just to get in there. They take away all electronic devices, even writing implements. You can't take notes. And that's how the way that they look at this phenomenon now. Something has truly changed. It's taken very, very seriously. And thankfully, MUFON, we do this with, as close to the scientific method as possible. And that caught my eye when I was looking for some way to proceed after my mom. These guys are scientific. They're not out looking for UFOs necessarily, but they're wanting to understand what this phenomenon is. And that made sense to me.
Was that
And
your personal aim then as well? To understand everything?
There was a simpatico there. And I felt very comfortable joining the group. I became a field investigator, and there's a training period. You have to go read volumes. You have the field investigator handbook, which is a big, thick, being a UFO investigator, it takes some work, and they don't give doctorates in this, but it requires that much study. But anyway, I kind of took to this like a fish to water. It worked really well for me. And at this point, it's over 1,000 cases. I have a team that works under me, 14 people right now, highly trained. And I can say that because I've mentored them all myself. I have like a police detective working with me. I've got a guy who's actually a private eye, still works as a private eye, who worked with intelligence when he was in the Navy or the Air Force. I better not. He was in the military. He worked for intelligence. And I've got people with a background in astronomy. I've got a hot guitar player as my chief investigator, but he just happens to have a propensity for this stuff. He's very, very careful and probably more perspicacious than I am about these cases. What is that? You don't want to just land on, well, that's a UFO, blah. There's a process.
And you need a logical mind. Yeah.
All the boxes. You want to go for these better cases. You want to go in person. You want to talk to all the witnesses. You want to talk with them multiple times. We're very careful about what we call a UFO. I'm proud of that.
Yeah, and so you should be. A question for you: if your mum had not put these seeds of the growth of the UFO question in your head, would you be a MUFON investigator?
Probably not. Probably not.
So nothing else crossed your path in the meantime that might have nudged you?
I don't know. Now, my mom, she was pregnant with me when she was working under there. And I don't know, maybe it's aliens. Woo. I don't know what happened, but for some reason, I seemed obsessed with outer space as a little kid. I don't know if that's related to my mom or, but I kind of, it makes sense. I don't like, talk about that seriously as being why, but maybe, you're sort of, you're in that milieu, and it kind of seemed like it showed up in my life, and I don't know what possessed me as a little kid to climb up the monkey bars and do my little ritual every day. It didn't end there. I mean, I was always like,
you're still doing it now, aren't you?
Boards together into a reasonable 5-year-old facsimile of a spaceship and stuff. And I just seemed very obsessed with it. So I think maybe that's where it came from. But I wasn't really into UFOs. I was into astronomy growing up. I was actually reading a lot of, Arthur C. Clarke's science fiction and Asimov and loved Carl Sagan and all those guys. And they kind of poo-pooed the idea of UFOs. So it was a quandary for me. I couldn't quite understand how, because I knew my mom was, she got into her position with the aerospace companies somehow. How did that happen? But yet, these guys are saying that this is a phenomena that doesn't exist. Now, later on,
smoke and mirrors, yeah.
Yeah, well, now, I'm friends with the sons of Dr. J. Allen Hynek, Paul Hynek and his brother Joel. And they have the correspondence between their father and Arthur C. Clarke. And what Clark said, and I've read the letter, it's not an email. There was no such thing back then. It was a typed out letter from Arthur Clark. And he said, Alan, I actually really think that there's something to what you are doing. And I do think that there is something to the UFO phenomenon. But I could never say that publicly because I wouldn't be invited to any more moonshots. They used to have him come and be a commentator on the news for NASA. And they didn't want this phenomena to be talked about seriously. So, but that was Arthur Clark. He actually did think that UFOs were real. He just couldn't say publicly. I think
Well,
Carl
that's the
Sagan
shame
knew
of it,
as
isn't
well.
it, Earl? Is that most
Yes.
people do not publicly, privately think these things, but they want to not do it in publicly because they don't want to risk losing finances somehow.
Yes.
It then takes for them to pass away or to age out of the phenomenon for us to progress with it.
I agree.
That's the unfortunate side of things.
Yeah.
I know Katie Page.
Katie's a good friend.
Yeah, I had a wonderful time speaking with her when she was on. We had a good laugh. How did you two meet?
She was a MUFON member as well. And I think that the way we first met, we were both on MUFON's symposia team. We were kind of, Marketa Klimova is the woman that puts together the symposium that MUFON does every year. We have a big gathering. People come out from, housewives to scientists, and we try to get some of the best and most respected speakers out there. And Katie and I were sort of on that. We were working on that board of directors of that group together. And I think that's how I met Katie initially. But, we have similar, similar goals in life. And she's another person where the phenomenon goes back to her childhood. And she's still trying to, figure out that question mark, is still there. So I guess we have that in common, but we're good friends. I love Katie. She does really good work.
We had a good laugh.
Yeah.
What is this personal synchronicity that you share? I'm sure I read that on your website.
Well, synchronicity. Carl Jung is the gentleman who he coined the term synchronicity. And he gave an example of synchronicity when asked what it was. He was having a session with one of his clients, psychology clients, and she was telling him about this elaborate dream she had, where it was kind of focused on this iridescent, colorful scarab beetle. And she was describing this beetle that she was perusing in this dream, when there was this battering sound at the window. And I guess that Dr. Young was interrupting their session. So he excused himself. He went and he opened up the window, and in flies a scarab beetle. It landed on the little table between the two of them. And there they are. They're looking at this beetle, which, was dream material just a minute before. And now there it is. It was a meaningful coincidence. And that is synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence. When I had a friend, he's still a friend, Terry Arbogast. And he he calls himself a Roswell investigator. And we were chatting on social media about 11 years ago, and he told me, he asked me about a bit of artwork that I'd done that had a flying saucer in it. And he asked me if flying saucers meant something to me, or if it was just an artistic meme I was using. And I told Terry, no, it's actually meaningful to me. And I told Terry what I told you about my mother.
Okay.
And Terry mentioned that he was a Roswell UFO crash incident investigator. And I'm like, there's such a thing? Really? And he's an intelligent guy, very right-brained. I could keep up with him half the time. He would speak in equations sometimes. And it's like, well, that's really interesting, Terry. And I think that, but Terry was kind of who engaged me. And when I started looking into MUFON and decided maybe I needed to go hands-on with this thing, and synchronicity plays very strongly in Terry's life, those meaningful coincidences. And Terry told me that that this is a way that this phenomena speaks to me. It speaks to people through synchronicities. And I thought that was very interesting. And I kind of took that up and I started looking for those coincidences in my own life. And I didn't have to look very far. They seemed to ramp up. And the more that I was kind of looking for them, it's almost like this synergy that happened. So I think that synchronicities are very important for people that have had contact or have had, it's not normal for a person to be obsessed with space aliens. I mean, that is a very strange obsession to have. And I think that when people have that obsession, that it comes from this core thing that maybe something's happened to them or they've had some kind of a childhood contact incident. A lot of people that you get talking with who have seen UFOs or report a UFO, especially in the military, people in officialdom, stuff like that. I don't think that this phenomenon is random. I think that it targets certain individuals for where it's going to be very important in their lives and maybe important, for those around them. And so anyway, that's how synchronicity works for me. I do look for those repeated, almost magical, meaningful coincidences. And I do experience that in my daily life. It surprises me when I don't experience that.
Well, you're just
I start
wise.
wondering what's wrong.
Yeah, you're just wise now, aren't you, to the signs of life? I would just call that signs, that you're recognizing stuff's happening. A lot of people won't recognize these little nudges and stuff that are in their way because they're too busy focused on their screen or something else in their life.
Yeah.
Because I've seen a few in my life.
It's subtle usually, but sometimes not so subtle,
Mm.
A good example is that I really was hoping to get in touch with Whitley Strieber, the author of Communion. And
yeah,
he sort of seems to look at this phenomena. I noticed sort of, again, kind of this similarity between the way that we both approached the phenomena. But I didn't know anybody that knew Whitley. Kind of keeps to himself. But lo and behold, all these people started showing up that were close friends with Whitley. In fact, Steve Neal, who I was mentioning earlier, who does these Breaking the Silence videos, he's worked with Whitley for many years. He's done a couple book covers for him. He's done films with Whitley, production stuff and CGI work. And one thing led to another, and now I'm in touch with Whitley, and that was meaningful to me because I see the phenomenon similarly to the way that Whitley does. And it just sort of opened up. I didn't really try to meet him, but it just, all these things built up to that. And
so like you were meant to almost, yeah.
Yeah, I was supposed to know the gentleman, and that's how synchronicity works.
Yeah,
it's kind of like magic.
It is. It's a fascinating topic, and you could follow all these threads forever, and then you could ultimately think, which is what I do, we're in a controlled stream of fate, and you have got like slight choices left and right here and there, but ultimately you're going to end up in the same place. That's the way I think, which is probably similar lines to what you think. Now, can you tell me what is the ERT and what is the aim of that?
Well, near and dear to my heart is the ERT. That's the Experiencer Resource Team. It's a branch of MUFON that, back in the early 70s to the late 70s, mostly we were getting in reports that were kind of nuts and bolts UFO, craft sightings.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, you'd get the odd case where somebody had contact with beings. Sometimes it would involve humanoid looking. Uh, you could bump into the person in the shopping center, and you might think, "Oh, it looks a little bit like a Viking, but it's just interesting looking person." But it would be people like that. But then you would have like the little gray guys with the black eyes that you see in, you know, television commercials anymore. It's sort of become this popular image. But people were having these contact incidents, and we were noticing many details that were similar, one case to another. And these incidents of contact, it wasn't really on television yet. You didn't see it written about seriously, but yet there it was, these cases of contact. So MUFON needed a way to deal with these cases. It was a little different speaking with someone who's going to become very emotional, usually, because it stops them in their tracks. It's, people are left with PTSD, ontological shock, after having these contact events. You can't just walk away from it and keep living life normally. It's like a combat veteran. It changes a person. So that's when we saw a need to have some experts involved here that maybe could help these people and get down to the bottom of what was happening to them. So Bud Hopkins, he was one of the early pioneers in this field. MUFON had gotten a hold of Bud, and he kind of helped us come up with, a set of questions and ways to approach people that had gone through this sort of thing. Bud, working with Kathleen Marden, who is still with MUFON, is my personal mentor, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, Kathleen is my mentor. She says she was my mentor, but I know she'll
Still is,
always
yeah.
be that for me. She was there for me because I had my wife and we had a contact incident that I don't think was random. I think we were targeted. It was meant to be very scary, and it changed my life. And I'd gone seeking advice and just what happened? What was that? Why? And a lot of the folks I knew were very nuts and bolts, and I was kind of told, you should probably keep this to yourself and not talk about it. It could bring ridicule on you and on MUFON ultimately as well. And but it kind of ate at me. I didn't know what it meant. And I did, it's going to happen again. Is this something that, I have to worry about my children and stuff? So I sought Kathleen out because she's the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, which was the first well-known abduction case. Happened in 1961 in New Hampshire, middle of nowhere. And, you can Google that, Betty and Barney Hill, and everything will pop up. There's films and all kinds of stuff, some better than others.
And the regression tapes are quite scary to listen to as well.
They sure are. They sure are. So I sought out Kathleen. I knew about MUFON's ERT. I wasn't a member. And I met with her for lunch, and we talked a lot. And she listened, and there wasn't judgment coming from her. I didn't get a raised eyebrow. She was familiar with this aspect of the phenomenon. And at the end of an hour, I just felt like, wow, I feel so much better about things. I'm not afraid anymore. It's almost like this weight was lifted off my shoulders. And I asked Kathleen, I said, I might actually want to become an ERT member. How, could I get an interview, or how do you guys do that? And she kind of laughed a little bit. She shook my hand. She said, "Well, Earl, what do you think we've been doing the last hour? Welcome to
That
the
was the
ERT.
interview. Yeah.
We'll mentor you in, and I'll help. And I've got a couple people that a psychologist and another person that anyway, she had some really good people set there to sort of guide my way. And one woman, Ann Castle, is from the Monroe Institute. Very impressive mentors that I had and still have. So anyway, that's the ERT. It's the Experiencer Resource Team. I am in the executive board of the ERT. And I like to think of ourselves as a compassionate wing of MUFON, that we're there to help these people to get on with life after having this life-changing incident happen. Sometimes happens to entire families.
Definitely needed. I'd be remiss then if I didn't ask you at this point what your experience was, so that we can then branch out from that and then try to understand from your perspective what it's all for and what it's about, and whether it's evil or beneficial.
Once the everything bagel year. Yeah, and that's perfectly good. I'm happy to hand that everything bagel to you. So goodness. Well, this was 10 years ago, and I'd been a field investigator for maybe 6 months. I had maybe 30 some cases under my belt. I was feeling my oats as a field investigator. I don't think I didn't have an actual UFO yet. Most of the cases wound up being somebody that saw Venus or saw, an aircraft or like a satellite doing a iridium flare. Satellites, once the sun is down below the horizon, it's still up there where in low Earth orbit. And so if a satellite turns to where it will reflect the sun back, you'll see a flash, and people will see that recurring flash and think that's a UFO. So, I kind of knew my stuff at that point. But I'd heard about this guy, I'm not going to mention names, but who was doing what was called a CE5 meditation. Now, I thought it was kind of a far-fetched idea, but the idea was that you get into a meditative state and that you could actually draw a UFO to yourself. And, I think some people do have a gift at this. There is a consciousness element to this phenomenon that I think is very real and is there. But then again, some people treat this like the circus, and it's kind of an abused thing. People that charge money to do, meditate a UFO in for you is a little, I don't know, a little dodgy at best, I think, sometimes.
Like somebody with initials SG, perchance.
No, we're not going to go.
We won't go there, but that's what you mean. Anyway.
I'm not out to harm careers or anything.
No,
but anyway, I wasn't willing to pony up $3,500 to have somebody do that for me. And plus, I didn't even really take it that seriously. So I decided to try it myself. But it wasn't good enough just to bring in a UFO. I wanted to meet the guys that were piloting UFOs. It was not specific about who I wanted to meet. I did know how to meditate. I had the little mandala and the corner, the focal point. And, I did do some meditative work back in, my early 40s and stuff. So I knew how to do that. I was pretty good at it. And so I would get into a meditative state, and I just put the question out there. I said, can I meet you? I want to meet the pilots of the UFOs. And I wasn't specific who. I think in my mind, I was hoping to meet like the nice Viking looking guys, that sort of Star Trekky, But no, I didn't specify. And I said, if abducting me is the price of the ticket, have at it. Take my DNA. I don't care. Well, apparently it worked. Or maybe this was going to happen and it was one of those coincidences. I don't know. But I'd gone upstairs. My wife was already asleep. We had a little loft bedroom. We were living in Burbank California. My wife works for the studios out there. So it wasn't a rural area. There wasn't room to park a UFO between our house and our neighbor's house. But somehow or another, I went upstairs and this weird thing started happening. Our room began flooding with this blue glow, like the air itself was self illuminated. Now we know that light, it's photonic, it's waves or particles. That's a whole other subject. Uh, Wavicles is the word they finally, kind of a nonsense word that physicists constructed to sort of live with the fact that quantum mechanics is a little bit like voodoo. But anyway, we know that light needs a source, that it doesn't just self illuminate the air. But that was what was happening. Rather than questioning this, I'm sort of semi-recumbent. I have a bad back, so I have pillows behind me here talking with you.
I know,
Still an
nice
issue.
Roswell pillow as well, that one.
Yeah, that is a Roswell pillow.
Yeah.
Oh, it's very
I saw it
observant
earlier,
man.
yeah.
So, but anyway, it wasn't like I was lying flat. I was semi-recumbent, and I was not asleep. I was interested. It was weird. The room was turning blue.
Mm.
My wife was snoozing next to me, dead to the world. And a funny thing, I felt more and more calm, more comfortable. And there was this area in front of our bed that it seemed like it was spinning around on its own accord. It had light that was coming from itself, almost looked like a whirlpool, or like if you looked at the Whirlpool Galaxy, one of our neighbors out there in the cosmos, it almost looked like I was hovering over a spiral galaxy and this thing was spinning around. But it wasn't a galaxy. It wasn't even an image of one, but maybe that's just what came to mind. But it was this kind of sepia colored area in front of the bed, 7 feet across. And again, I was not afraid. I was strangely accepting of this. They do kind of run the narrative, our visitors, I believe. You may think they are your thoughts and your intentions, but it's very hard to kind of decipher which is which when you've had this kind of an incident happen to you. Sounds became muffled in our house. Now, we were just on the Chandler bike path there. It's a busy area, an urban area, but you couldn't hear any external sounds from our house. It got so I couldn't even hear my wife breathing. We had a cricket problem in the rafters, couldn't hear crickets. It became very, very, very hyper silent, like a studio quiet room. And I started noticing I couldn't move my fingers, my feet, I could move my eyes, and that was it. Then I started becoming concerned. This area in front of the bed became brighter, and it opened up suddenly from the center out to the periphery. It was a 7 foot hole in space. I used to refer to it as a hole in the wall, but it wasn't the wall. It was like the best I can, a portal maybe, or
Mm.
Einstein Rosen bridge of some kind. It was an opening. I think it was dimensional. And anyway, far in the distance, you could see these diminutive figures that seemed to pull up towards me. It was 4 of them. And they weren't walking up. It was weird. It's like a Dali painting or something. Very, very dramatic. And I'm getting very concerned. I can't move. And these things are drawn up to me. And they came out of this portal. And it was 4 of the little gray guys, 4 foot tall. I couldn't see any clothing or uniforms or anything that they were wearing. It was like dolphin skin, the big black eyes, and you can't look away from those eyes. It's like staring into the abyss. Don't stare into the abyss, it may stare back. That was what it was like. It was this interaction. And I was afraid. I did not fall asleep. People talk about sleep paralysis. I was fully awake when this happened.
But your
They
body
took,
was paralyzed, presumably. It's just
yes,
you could
well, they
only
do
do your
that,
eyes,
and we
maybe.
know this now. And I think I know why. I mean, I've spoken. There was one guy, a little German guy I had, who kept having these contact incidents, and he felt like he didn't like it one bit. He started sleeping with a gun under his pillow. And I told him, I said, well, if you get a shot off, it's probably going to hit your neighbor or somebody, or you're going to start an interstellar war. It's maybe not a good way to react to this, but he was all. So I think that, there's probably, they've probably had people that fought back, and this is what they do. It's what we do. If we are studying a pride of lions, we'll hover over them with a helicopter, we'll hit them with a tranquilizer dart. The rest of the lions will run off, but we'll go and we'll take blood, we'll tag them. And, a year later, the same, it'll be a repeat. That's how you get your data. You find out, how they live in the wild. Maybe it's something similar going on with us. I don't know. But that's kind of the allegory that comes to mind for me. But they took blood from me. It scared me because I was not getting a telepathic message of calmness from them. It was very businesslike. I'm not going to say that it was evil aliens any more than the guys that shoot a tranquilizer dart at a lion are evil. It was just all business. When they finished up, they left the same way they came in. It was abstract. They pulled back like somebody was pulling them away from me. You can't look away from their eyes. It's magnetic. So I'm still staring at these black eyes. And I was scared. I was upset. But at this point, I knew, they weren't going to kill me. They weren't going to drain me of blood. That was actually a worry because I didn't get a telepathic message from them. I'd read enough literature at that point that I knew that usually there will be somebody that will communicate with you and say, don't worry, we'll be done with this soon and you're going to be fine. That didn't happen for some reason. Maybe somebody was off duty that night. Maybe it was an apprentice that didn't know how to do it properly. Who knows? Maybe they just wanted to mess with old Earl. I don't. I have no idea.
Here's a question, right? This one strikes me as unusual, yours, in that most people, I would assume, from based on what I've read, are taken to a place and then that happens. Now, yours happened in situ at your house.
They did a house call. Yeah, it was a house call. Actually, it's not that uncommon.
Oh.
Having worked with the ERT now and having worked on hundreds of these cases, I would say a good 70% of the time, they don't actually take you to a craft. They come to you, they do their business there, and then they leave. Now, sometimes people are taken to a craft. Sometimes there have been mass abductions. I mean, there was one woman I was speaking with who was on an Olympic swim team, and she claimed that the entire swim team was taken after a practice, by these entities. And a very serious woman. And she and a friend had a UFO sighting that was local here, is how I heard this story about the Olympics. People are taken to craft. That does happen, but it seems more common that people are visited. It's something similar to what I experienced. And you never really leave your bedroom.
No, I know. No, I don't.
Or car.
That's kind of new to me.
I have a police officer that was, this happened to him when he was on duty in his cruiser. And he was very honest. He had to explain what happened to the other, officers back, why he wasn't answering the radio for half an hour. I have a guy who is, and I won't mention the aerospace company, but you would know they work with the military a lot. And this guy is a mucky muck with 90 people working under him. And he has a story very, very similar to my own. A guy in New York got a hold of me. Same story. So apparently this isn't an uncommon thing. I think that targeted individuals that this happens to, I don't know why they're so interested in our DNA, but that is the purest form of DNA that you can get, is from blood. You know, I always thought it was semen or something else, but no, the blood
Or
is
bone
apparently
marrow is
what
another
you,
one I'd have
or
thought.
bone marrow, and that happens too. You hear people that have scoop marks that are left that are anomalous, and they don't know where they came from.
I've got one on my
Um,
thigh, funnily, weirdly enough.
oh,
A scoop
welcome to the
mark.
club, there,
Yeah,
Coit.
it makes me think, oh
Well, no
God,
wonder
here we
you
go.
wanted me on your show.
I have some questions about the eyes. Right,
Certainly.
here's an interesting thought. So you've got four beings coming at you, right? And you can't
Hmm.
look away from the eyes, but
No.
you can only look at one set of eyes as a person, because we otherwise we do that, don't we? We flick, you know. And even when
Yeah.
we look at eyes, our eyes still flick. So
Well,
was there somebody in the lead? Is what I'm getting at. One of the aliens.
there was one, there was a being that stood, I sometimes don't mention it because he just stood there, but I thought of him as like a sentinel. And he never left that portal or whatever it was. You could see him standing there. The light was coming from behind him. I couldn't see his features, but he seemed taller than the other ones. And maybe he was the one that was in control of it. And maybe he was the one that was supposed to be communicating with me and messed up.
Yeah, an off
But
day.
that's
That's
his
right. Yeah.
hypothesis. I don't
Yeah,
know.
my
I don't.
point was, were you gazing at that chap, and then the other three were just going about their business, and your periphery
No,
was
I
seeing
was
them?
looking at from being to being, and I was looking
Oh,
at
okay.
their eyes.
Your
But
eyes did move.
very
Okay,
drawn to their eyes,
I
though.
got you.
You're very drawn to their eyes.
Was there any smells?
That I have been asked, and my olfactory sense isn't the best of my senses. I didn't notice any scents.
No, fair
I
enough.
didn't notice.
And you
You'll
know
hear
the
people say like sulfur and things like that. I didn't smell anything like
no,
that.
that's fair enough. You know the whole everything goes silent routine.
Yeah.
Where do you sit with it? I know you mentioned it's almost like you went into a pocket dimension. Maybe that's what
Yes.
it is.
Well, that's what I think.
Yeah, so it's definitely
Um,
that. I was thinking there's other off things like being out of time somewhere, so maybe that is the dimension, or you know, are you turned off? Are your senses turned off? Is that what it is?
I feel like I had full sensorium going on. Uh, my senses weren't shut off. If anything, it was pretty darned acute.
Oh.
I've never been hypnotically regressed.
Would you?
This I re Yeah, I would. I'm willing to do it, but I don't know that there's any need because I remember the whole event. Now, a lot of people that it's the their memories are erased, and the only way to get to them is through hypnotic regression. But for myself, it was right there. I mean, I knew what happened. I mean,
Hmm.
when I was able to move, I was shaking my wife awake and yelling. I was, yeah, I was scared.
I
I was
bet she was
upset.
scared when you did that. Yeah,
She was mad.
I bet.
She had to work, in a few hours. And her whole thing was, my God, you joined this crazy UFO group. Is this the kind of thing that I have to look forward to? Not happy at all. And we didn't talk about it the next day. It was almost like we came to this agreement to never mention it. But 2 nights after my experience happened, my wife was shaking and waking me. And again, our room had that blue, flooded blue light going on. There were no beings. I didn't see a portal in front of the bed, but my wife was very upset, and she was up pacing next to the bed. And she said, Earl, you need to tell your little friends that they need to leave us the F alone. I didn't sign up for it.
Good on her.
She's very, very angry, which, I love my wife, and everybody that knows her, that she's a beloved woman, smart as a tack, and but that was how she reacted to this thing, is how dare this happen in my house, and I think she was kind of blaming me, and she probably had reason to. I don't think she would have
Yeah.
invited vampires into the house. But then I was at least relieved because, well, Lisa knows that I didn't have some psychotic break, thank God. Um, but then again, we didn't talk about it. It was like we come to this weird, agreement. So 2 nights after that, we both woke up. Now, I don't know if there was an incident that happened before, and I guess I would be willing to go through hypnotic regression to find out. But this time we both woke up, is how it seemed to us. And again, that blue glow in our room, which it's like, again, what the hell? We both get up. I got up and we had Venetian blinds, right, to cover the window, one window in that bedroom, another little window in the bathroom. That was it. So I pull up the Venetian blinds. It was 3 a.m. in our backyard. It was like God was shining a spotlight on our backyard. It was the brightest light, like high noon in our backyard. You could see every little leaf from the trees that we had planted there. It was so bright, there was no diffusive element to the light. It was sharp, as though somebody had cut, leaves and out of black paper and put them on the ground. This light was so bright, it was so focused, like a laser cannon. And again, perfect silence. You couldn't hear external sounds, no crickets. But my wife and I both were experiencing this, both seeing this unbelievable thing happening in our backyard. And my wife and I, I'm going through my head trying to rationalize, maybe is it neighbor porch light or something, which was absurd. No porch light could do that. No helicopter, because you didn't hear rotors. If it's a police helicopter, you hear those. Perfect silence. And Lisa and I, we both heard in our head. So I do know what a telepathic message is like, because on the third night we got one. Now, I don't know if it was a joke, if it was a punchline, or if they thought that we were that daft that we would take this as an explanation. But we heard like a megaphone in both of our heads. Don't worry, it's just the neighbor's porch light, which I think they got from my rationalizations. But we heard this like somebody was shouting it, but inside of our own heads. And Lisa's on one side of the window, I'm on the other, and we looked at each other and we laughed. And we said out loud at the same time, that is no damn porch light. So again, the light shut off. I was not going to run outside. Okay, I've heard of Travis Walton's story from Travis himself.
Don't go there.
I'm not going to go there. So, but Lisa forgot. All she remembered for years, Koit, was the blue light. She remembered that, and she knew that that's anomalous. She knows that light needs a source. She knew something had happened. Made her very uncomfortable, but she didn't remember anything beyond that until recently. She saw Steve Neal's CGI recreation of our experience, and we're sitting there on the couch, we're watching Steve's CGI film, and Lisa's grabbing my arm and pulling on the she's going, my God, I remember this happened. How could I ever forget? This is such an important thing. My God, it's real. It happened. Like the shutters were lifted, the Venetian blinds of her memory were lifted. And that was so meaningful to me, because now at least she has that, she does not want to remember beings, and I don't blame her.
No, I would be the same. I wouldn't want to really.
No, she does not want hypnotic regression. In fact, she's afraid to watch Steve's film. She's afraid that she'll remember more now, and she just doesn't want to. She remembers enough that she knows what happened. She knows that it was odd, strange, that it wasn't human activity, that it was anomalous. But she's happy with that much information.
Yeah, I would be. The shaft of light, were there any reports from your neighbors or anyone else that saw that?
No, and I reacted really like I look back at the way I reacted to this stuff, and it's embarrassing in a way because I'm a trained observer. I'm used to knocking on doors and giving my business card and taking notes and asking this stuff, but it seemed like something that I'm not going to do this, like it was already preordained or something. Um, now the one neighbor that we had next door, I thought about asking, going back to our old house and maybe, but I the way I feel about what happened, I feel like it was for us. I feel like it was personal. And I don't know that, I did see people's porch lights turning on. That is why I did, I was like trying to rationalize what was going on. So that did happen. And I do know other people saw this light, but I did not follow up on that.
That's fair
It
enough.
seemed like I wasn't supposed to. That was, I've
Like
had
you were
another.
programmed not to,
Yes, yeah,
in a
yeah.
way.
I believe
It,
that they run the narrative.
yeah. You say it's a personal experience for you. To what end? What do you think? Because you're already sold on the thing because you've been investigating. So what
Well, I'm
there is
not
that
really
set for?
sold. I don't. People will ask me, "Is this aliens? Is this or that?" I can't tell you. Are they astronauts from other planets? That's kind of I don't know. I kind of fall on the same. I've sort of landed at the same spot that Dr. Hynek landed on, and Jacques Vallée is his assistant, and who's still with us, Dr. Jacques Vallée, wonderful, intelligent man, scientist. You can thank him for the internet. He was one of the guys that was working with the military early on, developing the early internet. But they both believe that this is probably an interdimensional phenomenon, that it's not coming from light years away, that it's right next door, maybe a parallel, dimension to ours. And if you look into the thought behind, the multi-universe idea, multiverse stuff, it sort of works like a fractal. Like if you've ever done a Mandelbrot fractal zoom, you'll see these repeated patterns, and they change just a wee little bit first, but you zoom in far enough and you have quite a bit of change. And maybe it's the same way with dimensions, that there's another Koit, up here, another
He's
Earl, and
not as
and,
good
and our
looking
lives
though,
are very
Earl.
similar. Yeah, I mean, it may be, the difference may be that you drink coffee instead of tea, or some little thing like that.
Mm.
Or, I mean, it's possible that there are very different histories, comparatively speaking, per, level. So maybe that's where this is coming from. It would explain why an opening in space would happen. I believe that they're traveling interdimensionally. That's how they trick, the laws of physics, uh, to be able to get to where they get and do what they do.
Mm.
It seems like magic. It seems like voodoo, but quantum mechanics seems like magic and voodoo. People will ask me, is this paranormal? And I'll say, well, it's para nothing. You need to expand your idea of what normal is.
Well, that's it. We don't really know what normal is because that could be normal since the dawn of
Oh,
creation, but we're
yeah.
just not seeing it, the bigger picture. Um,
Yes.
the abductions then, if you had to put money, if you're a gambler, man, what would you say it's for? Just science or something else?
I think it goes deeper than that, and I don't understand. I have a lot of hypotheticals that I think about. The DNA thing seems very important to them. Maybe it's sort of like a seed bank. They're worried that we're going to destroy ourselves. Maybe we'll be replanted somewhere if we
Mm.
do the unthinkable. I don't know. Maybe they're farming us. We make good hamburgers. Perry Farrell is
Don't
old.
say
We make
that.
great
Yeah,
pets.
yeah,
Well,
it's
no,
true.
I don't think so. I don't think you're gonna. Anyway, that's
No,
I'm
I know, but it
joking.
is a hypothesis, isn't it? It's like we are cattle, essentially. I've heard other guests
Maybe
say it to
I
me.
don't know though, but I
Mm.
see it seems like they care because, um, there's sort of a trifecta of messages that people are given. And I've heard the same three telepathic quotes from many, many people. It seems like it's just this recurring meme. And a lot of them were in the military. I have one Navy guy that was taken up through the decks of the battleship he was serving on and taken up into low Earth orbit. And he was shown possible futures where, we had nuclear exchanges and or terrible environmental issues that destroyed the planet. And these beings waited for a reaction, and he reacted with horror. And then he reacted with compassion and sadness. And it seemed like that was what they were waiting for. And he was sent back to his battleship, his rack. There he is, confused, the novel sitting on his lap that he was reading, still there. And I have another Marine that the same thing happened, but the barracks of Camp Pendleton. I got aerospace engineers and people that are in political realm and that have the same three telepathic messages they were given. And those three messages are these. Number one, nuclear weapons are evil and nuclear war is unsurvivable. And if you try it, you will not survive. You will destroy your world. So don't try it. Number two, stop trashing your world. It's not this disposable resource that you can go to some other planet and do the same thing to again and again. It doesn't work that way. You get one world, it has a beautiful, rich biosphere. Treat it well, treat it better. And then number three, you guys are living like barbarians still. Your science is way up here, but you're still living like Attila the Hun down here with the warring and the fights over, land and this and that, and differences, minor differences amongst people. You need to better yourselves, raise your vibration, live on a higher frequency. And sometimes those words are actually used, higher frequency, a higher vibration. And people are confused. It's like, what does that mean? Am I supposed to vibrate and shake? What are they talking about? It's like, well, no, there's a spiritual thing that they're talking about. And it seems almost like we're being scolded and being pushed to become better humans than we are.
But slyly, behind
slowly.
The scenes, almost. No, slyly, and behind the scenes. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's very evident to the people that are given these messages. They remember them word for word, and it's powerful.
They do. What I was getting at, it's not like overtly, boom, here we are. You need to do this because of X, Y, and Z. It's like
no, it's
do you know what
yes,
I mean?
it's hinted at, but very strongly so. And I see this happen a lot to people in the military. I don't think that's a coincidence. I mean, we see a lot of activity over military bases. Robert Solis, very close friend of mine, he was the commander of the Malmstrom base back in 1967, where they had an incursion of a UFO over their nuclear facility. He was in the capsule 30 feet underground, and he watched the 10 missiles that they had, their ordnance made, they were ruined. They had to be completely rewired, and they had to bring in engineers to fix those missiles. It was a message that was being given to him, and it was not subtle at all. And people thought, well, maybe it was an electronic pulse that they used to do this. No, those missiles were targeted individually, and they went down one at a time. He watched them go offline. The computers system kept working. The air pumps, because they had to have air, brought down to that capsule, they were working fine. The video camera, the radio, everything was operating perfectly, but those missiles were targeted. Same thing happened over at Minot Air Force Base to Commander David Schindler, who I've had dinner with Mr. Schindler, a very wonderful gentleman, highly decorated military guy. and he has the exact same story that Robert Solis tells. And both of them, they're willing to go. They have gone to Congress. They've told their story, and it was kind of tamped down purposefully, I believe. Now they're trying to see if Robert can go and speak under oath, hand on the Bible stuff, and redo it for the full congressional constituency. And I'm all for it, because I think that this is a message we're being given. I think that there's care for us, that there's worry and concern, that we are we could be entering the space age. We could have Star Trek very, very soon. But I think that there is concern that we're going to go out there and do Star Wars instead of Star Trek. You look at human history, and
we are like that, aren't we? Yeah, it's ultimately what you said earlier. Our brains have not caught up pace with our technology, so we're still the warlike ape with just bigger bombs. And it's
maybe they should have uplifted the dolphins instead of ignored the primates. I don't know.
No, maybe they already did uplift the dolphins, and that's what the grey aliens are. We know that's one of the hypotheses, that they're us from the future as well.
I haven't heard that one.
Have you not? Oh, dolphins.
That makes sense. Well, the skin is very similar. I mean, I've touched a dolphin. One of those aquariums where you get to do that. And that was kind of what I thought. You could feel their hands on me. When I had my incident, and it was very similar. It didn't seem warm-blooded either. It seemed a little like, I don't know, like a dolphin.
Just weird either way.
It was very weird.
Yeah,
although dolphins are warm-blooded, I guess. They are.
Yeah. I've ridden one as well at the old SeaWorld or Discovery Cove or wherever it was. What was I going to say? Yes, the abductions. Do you think it's a forever process, or is it a means to an end until we raise our vibration, that sort of thing?
I think it's a means to an end. I think that that's a goal that they have. We think in terms of, I hear a lot about, why don't they just land on the White House lawn? And that's not the way they do this. There seems to be a personal element. People react to this phenomenon in all manner of ways. There's a lot of fear involved for people. Are they going to invade us? Are they going to eat us? And I think that there is a reason why this is one-on-one. And more times than not, it's very surprising. People will have this. Sometimes people will have abductions that are recurring, and almost like they get little checkups along the line. And again, it's individuals. It's very personal the way this happens. And maybe it's just they're really taking care, and they have. I think that maybe some of us are just being reattuned, and maybe they're changing us subtly. I hear that too. Is this a grand replacement theory thing where they're taking over humans and taking our places? And no, I don't think at all. I think that there's a worry and a concern that they don't want to change us so much that we're no longer human. And maybe that's why it's so subtle and so slow, this process, so painstaking.
It's disclosure at grassroots level, isn't it, ultimately?
I don't think they care about disclosure. That's a human thing. Humans want disclosure. I don't know what we would disclose. Who's going to do it? We don't have a Walter Cronkite.
No, but from their perspective, if obviously they were getting nowhere with the power, the people that be, and then won't disseminate the information to us, they think, sod it, we'll go at the ground level, put the knowledge in that the aliens do exist, that sort of thing. With enough people, there becomes a tipping point.
Yeah, I think that's happening just naturally with us, just because of the amount of evidence. I mean, I had, Fox News in Fresno got a hold of me yesterday, and they wanted a seat of the pants assessment on a video they had. And I see a lot of videos. Usually it's Planet Venus or a drone or something. And I'm watching this, and it's like what you'd call an orb, I guess. MUFON doesn't like that term. It'll usually use like a spherical plasma type object. But you see this thing hanging there. defying gravity, and then suddenly it shoots off. It looks like maybe 5-6 miles, 10 kilometers or so, instantly. And then it's just hovering in this new spot. Now, I checked this video, I checked all the pixelation of it. The British debunker, Mick West, he wanted to say that it was because they suddenly zoomed in on it or out on it and made it appear to move. No, lazy job there, Mick. He usually does better with his debunkeries, but that wasn't a good one, because I did check the pixels that were there. I did check the EXIF data. Everything was in order. It was just we saw this anomalous object that supposedly doesn't exist suddenly move from here to there in like an eye blink. I don't think we can do that.
Definitely not.
We get interesting reports. They're ongoing. They're not landing on the White House lawn. I don't think that's the way they do this. I don't even know that they care about the White House or what the government thinks. I think it's probably a personal phenomenon.
Or maybe they've already interacted and realized that, like I said, that we don't do anything anyway at top level, so they think that we'll bypass it. Right, before we move on to your music,
it mess up disclosure too.
Exactly. Before we move it, because I want to talk about your musical journey in your life, because I always think about that side of things. In all of your work with MUFON, though, what means the most to you? The knowledge that you've accumulated, or the people that you've worked with?
God, I can't really separate one from the other. I have the best, dearest friends, people I just respect so very much. The Hynek brothers, their father is like a hero to me. And, this is, dear friends that, will hang out, just a social hangout, Kathleen Martin, who's so important in my life. All these people are just very, very meaningful. Katie, that we were talking about earlier, so I can't really, divide one from the other. I do understand this phenomena a heck of a lot more than I did when I walked into MUFON's door. But do I know everything? Certainly not.
You don't know
I don't
everything.
even know if they're aliens or interdimensional creatures or us from the future or dolphins.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go there. I don't know. I'm not going to, that's something I don't know. So
it's good to keep mysteries anyway, because it keeps the brain involved and wanting to progress more.
Sure.
Right, let's take a big sideways slant now into into music. So tell me about your musical life. What do you like doing, etc.?
Sure. I seem to gravitate to the acoustic guitar, even though I, play electric, and, I am a lead player. I played in my share of bands over the years. We had kind of a local progressive rock band back in the 1970s that I was playing in. And, this just seemed to be an innate talent that I had. It was very easy for me to listen to my Beatle records and then play along with them. I'd figure out chords that way. After a few years, I did get a proper, guitar teacher, a jazz guy who's very helpful. And I'm sure I was very frustrating to him, because I just wanted to play Beatles and Rolling Stones and Creedence Clearwater and Led Zeppelin, right? He wanted me to be playing, old jazz tunes and stuff. But that stuff came in very handy. That was kind of my focus for many, many, many years. I am a songwriter. I've got, if you go, you can look up Lover's Ridge by Earl Grey. That's on Spotify and on a few other streaming services. You can watch it on YouTube, actually.
I think I have seen one or two of your videos. Yeah, good stuff.
That I put out in 1992. It's all originals. I worked with Burley Drummond, who is from Alan Parsons' project, and Ambrosia, wonderful drummer, excellent producer. And we kind of went in the studio, and I just, paid him out of pocket to do this. I really kind of beat my head against the music industry here. And already by 1992, I was too old for them to want to sign. They want you when you're 20 years old. Not when you're 30 years old. So, that was my focus for many years. I still love to play. You know, I just was visiting with my grandkids, and of course, they bring the guitar out. It's like, God, I haven't even had time to touch my guitar in 6 months, you guys. Oh, you could do it, you know. And yeah, you know, it's just muscle memory and it's all there. My wife and I sing. I met Lisa Johnson, my wife, was another singer songwriter. She was Philadelphia based, and we were friends. We met through the music contacts, played the same venues, and she would sometimes ask me on stage to play lead guitar and sing for her.
That's cool.
And vice versa. I'd have her come out and play piano or guitar, sing in my gigs. And lo and behold, we fell in love. You know, it was a friendship and a music collaboration. Became the most important person in my life. We've been together since 2000 now. So that's a quarter of a century.
I have a question for you on your songwriting side of things, right?
Sure.
Obviously, you met your wife that way. Did you, prior to her knowing, write songs about her? And had she written songs about you prior to you knowing?
You know, she's written a couple songs that I guess are based on me. And but you know, I didn't write a song called Lisa or anything like, you know, and she did, you know, Earl doesn't rhyme with a whole lot of good stuff, you know.
Yeah, it's not much, is it?
No. Squirrel, squirrel, girl, you know, it's like, oh God, you know, it's a good name to be teased with, you know, when I was a kid. But no, I don't think we really did that so much. But we I don't know, it was both of our passion. She was a big Joni Mitchell person.
Oh, I.
And she impressed the hell out of me once because we were at this party and she's playing a Joni Mitchell song. It was in this weird tuning. I'm going, wow, how do you figure that out? It turned out she brought a tape recorder to a Joni Mitchell show back in the 1970s. She wasn't there to record the show. She was there to record the different tunings that she used. So she'd listen to Joni tuning up, you know, to these weird abstract tunings. And then she'd, you know, kind of turn the recorder off. It was like one of those mini recorders. So anyway, she took me aside and she sat there and she played for about an hour with every single song had some weird tuning, you know, that it's like, God, how do you figure that out? She's hitting all the notes, doing, you know, songs like Amelia or, you know, stuff from Cord and Spark. Help me, I think I'm falling in love again. That one, you know, I mean, there she is, you know, all the jazz chordings and stuff. So I think I fell in love with her during that hour of her playing all those Joni songs.
It's nice to hear. Very nice to hear. Is playing the be all and end all for you, or is it the writing of a song and then playing it?
I'm more interested in the writing, I think. I grew up with really good record albums, you know. I had the cool uncle that was, you know, secretly handing me the Beatles albums. Here's Sergeant Pepper, Don't Tell Your Dad. Dad was kind of religious and thought they were, you know, Britain's evil communist threat to America, right?
And we still are, yeah.
Yes, corrupting the youth, you know, growing your hair, you know, it's like it's supposed to be a crew cut. So, you know, I had those Beatles albums. I you know, had, you know, encouraged to listen to Clapton and B.B. King and, you know, just, and so I kind of took that in like a sponge, and I would try to copy Clapton's playing, and I would figure out his little arpeggios and lead runs just painstakingly, you know, lifting the record needle off the record and you know, put it back, you know, it was very kind of seat of the pants, but I seem to work pretty well that way, you know.
Quality.
So that's how I did with music. Nobody taught me how to write a song. I don't think anybody can. I think it's just in you, and you have to believe in yourself enough to put that out there. When I was in eighth grade, I had an English teacher that would let me do extra credit by writing a song. She said, well, here's the rules. You write the song, the music, and the lyrics, and it can't just be lousy lyrics. Okay, I want you, this is an English class. So I want you to be creative, like a creative writing project. But if you do this, you can play in front of the class on a Friday. I'll give you a little spot, and I'll give you an A plus at the end of the year. And I didn't have a real good grade in there before. And I took her up on this assignment as I started writing these songs. And I was kind of teased as a kid. And I realized when I was going in front of the class and I was playing these songs I was writing, that the teasing stopped. And people were sort of, well, he's kind of cool. Have you heard his songs? And girls actually, would go to the dance with me, which was a new thing. So it worked really well for me. And it's sort of like John Lennon. He was apparently his reaction to Elvis Presley, he saw all the girls screaming and stuff. He said, "That's a good job."
Yeah, it's certainly a confidence builder, isn't it? That much is certain. Where does the music come from? You mentioned in me, but does it come through you?
I wonder about, do ETs love music? Do they have music? I don't know. They're telepathic. I think if you're telepathic, you don't need to write a love sonnet or a love song, because your thoughts and emotions are already known. So this may be a very human activity, songwriting.
That makes sense, yeah.
Now, I was friends with, and it's a long story, but Chris Squire from the band Yes was a personal friend of mine. Synchronicity again, I was good friends with the woman that became his wife, Scotty Squire. Scotland Taylor was her name back then. And so I sort of inherited Chris as a friend. And he told me about an incident back in 1977 when he was on tour with Yes, where they were sort of in a remote area in the UK. And he had his caravan driver pull over. He had to use nature's loo, more or less.
The road.
So, yeah. So Chris is out there pissing on a rock, by his own words. And he felt looked at, and he looked up and he said, I can't do Chris's voice. I have like a little flu bug still, but I'll try. "Who do you imagine was piloting that thing, Earl? It was like right out of a science fiction film. It was the silver chrome disc. It had garish little purple lights on the bottom, and they were spinning around. I zipped up, and I'm looking up at this thing. It tilts to the side, and it just shot off like light speed. He said, if I had blinked, I would have missed it. Who do you suppose was piloting that thing?" I'm very sorry. Terrible accent. I know.
Oh, it's good. It passed.
Okay. So, and this was 3 a.m. when Chris is asking me. This is about 2004. They were on tour with Yes at the time. In his hotel, and he tells me this crazy story. And I told him, I said, well, there's this guy, Jacques Vallée, and he thinks that perhaps some UFOs are us from the future, that they're time machines, not so much as spacecraft. So, going along that line of thought, maybe that was a future musicologist, he wanted to see Chris Squire. I mean, I know John Lennon has a similar story, and I told him this, and I knew about John Lennon's sighting in New York. Very, very similar. He's standing on the balcony naked, and this thing comes up, like intentionally, is right in front of his apartment, hating there, there's John Lennon, and then it leaves like it was coming to see John Lennon. So I said, maybe it's a musicologist from the future. Maybe it was John Lennon first, then you, and maybe Bach or Beethoven or Stravinsky or somebody was next on the list.
Always caught when they're naked as well.
Yeah,
when they're having a piss or something.
And, Chris was not an emotionally demonstrable man. Okay, he was very kind of cool and collected and liked to be the intellect, but he gave me this bear hug. He said, he grabbed a Post-it note from the refrigerator and a pen, and he said, "Earl, I want you to tell me exactly what you said, verbatim. What did you say again?" I said, well, maybe aliens are us from the future. He gives me a bear hug, And it was time for me to go. It was 3 a.m. I had to work. I had to do a nursing shift in a few hours. But, you want to hang out with Chris if you could hang out with Chris, who's, left our planet now. Rest in peace, Chris. But anyway, Chris, this meant a lot to him. Next time I went to see Yes in concert, they had a new song, and it was called Aliens, Us from the Future. Chris didn't say anything, but he did wink at me in backstage. He knew I knew that, and I guess maybe that's my 15 minutes of fame there, is that I think that I was actually the one who gave him the idea for that song.
Yeah, you were an inspiration, and he should have given you 10% royalties. No. I'm messing, of course. No. Right, before we wrap up,
he recorded it with Steve Hackett from Genesis. So it was a one-off band they did called Squacket. It's a very good album, and if you listen to the song called Aliens, Us from the Future, that you can hear it.
I'm going to look for it because I've never heard that before. So
beautiful song.
It's cool. Thank you. I do like random recommendations, and that is going to go on the list. So before we wrap up, we are now going to enter the Koit Zone. Koit Zone! So, Koit Zone, strange questions, Earl. But you're going to be good with that. So let's start with an easy one. What is the best song ever?
Oh, goodness. Strawberry Fields Forever by the Beatles.
Going with that one. Classic. I do like it. It's got a weird start, hasn't it, Strawberry Fields?
Yeah. Very dreamlike.
Very unusual, yeah, but that's there.
Lewis Carroll influenced,
Very much so. Name something that annoys the shit out of you.
Oh, wow. Oh, God, I'm going to get in trouble. But the wrestling matches, the world wrestling stuff, that's all kind of pre-thought out and showmanship and just kind of obnoxious to me. I just don't like it.
In the bin. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. If guitars didn't exist, what instrument would you be playing?
Lute.
Lute,
very similar.
Yeah, you can't choose lute. That's a stringed one. Is there anything else?
I would love to play cello. I love cello. I love the sound of a cello.
You just love strings. You can't get away from a stringed instrument. Maybe that's
I love classical music. So, and I actually like chamber music, which is interesting, but I do,
I'm writing some at the moment.
Yeah. It's, you have to concentrate to listen to that music, but if you follow where it goes, it's interwoven and it has development. It takes you places. It's amazing. Yes. So yeah, I love the cello.
Cool. Lovely. You're offered $1 million to never ever work again. Are you taking it?
What that means I can't do what I'm doing now with UFOs and stuff? No, I wouldn't take it. No, screw that. No.
Good call.
Life is not money. I know miserable millionaires, so no.
That was the right answer. That's what I was expecting, so well played, you win. Yeah. What is the worst taste?
Oh, God. Vomit. Stomach bile. No comment.
Yeah. Move on quickly. Yeah.
All right.
Here's a good one for you. What's the oldest piece of clothing you own?
Jeez. I've got a shirt from a Yes concert, and it's about 30 years old. I think that's the oldest piece of clothing. I mean, Lisa's always trying to get me to get rid of it. It's like, no, it's meaningful. It's a souvenir,
Not until there's holes everywhere, is it going?
Yeah. Oh, God, I've had them, and with the holes and all that. What she wants to do eventually is she wants to have one of the bedspreads made with all the old shirts, because I have concert shirts, and I kind of hold on to them because I like the memories around them. So
it's a nice breathe a new life into them. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Here's a strange one for you, but I'm sure you'll cope with it. What's in your pockets right now?
Let's see. Business card holder.
Oh, lovely.
With business cards.
You're always ready. Yeah.
And what else? Anything else? No, I don't even have my handkerchief. That's it. It's business cards.
That's okay. You at least thank you for going through with it. A lot of people might tell me to piss off at that stage, so well done.
A Trojan. I'm sure you get all manner of answers for that one. Yeah.
Tell me the story of something in your background there. So pick an object behind you
Oh,
and tell me a
like
story
behind
about it.
me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anyone.
Okay, sure. How about this little guy?
Yeah, he looks cool.
All right. It's just you know, back when I had more time and I wasn't as busy, I would like just to kind of calm down. I like to make plastic models. So this is one of our visitors. And then what he's holding here is a beautiful crystal that was gifted to me by my friend Sev Talk.
Oh,
Sev is another ufologist. She's very attuned to experiencers. We have that commonality. And so she gave me that crystal to just, I guess, bring the positive energy in. And so I just keep it there. And sometimes it's nice because it'll refract and reflect the light, and you'll get the little miniature star field.
so that plastic chap is one of your visitors, yeah?
Yeah, he's a plastic model that I guess he was made commercially for a while, and you could get the
Oh, okay.
and I think I mean I his model glue and paint. I think I did it maybe 11 years ago when I still had enough time on my hands to waste time. So there you are.
Thank you. Have you ever been in a fist fight?
Yeah, I didn't like to do that. I've always been sort of empath oriented. And but when I was young, I was the kid who they liked to tease, and may have had something to do with standing in front of the class and talking about UFOs and space people. I seemed to kind of dog me for many years. So I got into junior high school, and it got to where, the bullies would want to fight. And I
Mm.
didn't like to fight back because it was like hitting myself. I knew it was a person. I didn't like to inflict pain, but necessity, was as such that I had to fight back. And it got to where if I left the front gate, there'd be one guy that would coordinate. There'd be another guy at the back gate. Um, so when I started hitting back, I mean, I remember I was in class. We actually had, as an elective, it was a golf class. So the Irish guy taught it, or Scottish. He was Scottish, the proverbial Scottish, fight, fight, fight type guy, right? And so this guy was, he hit me in the arm, and he looked at me, the teacher. He said, "What are you going to do about that, Earl?" And he had actually shut the door. He encouraged to fight. This was my teacher. So I hit the guy back. I gave him a bloody nose. And lo and behold, the guy that had hit me, he became like a best friend. I had to hit him back and give him a bloody nose. And somehow or another, he said, "Wow, you've got a really good right hook, Earl." I never would have guessed. And I
Mm.
guess word kind of got around, and and then when I started playing out as a musician, it wasn't as cool to try to pick a fist fight with me. But yeah, I've had my share,
Yeah.
in my youth.
It's a common story, that, isn't it? The bully then turns around to be the friend
Yeah,
afterwards.
yeah,
Yeah.
that happened a couple
Yeah.
times.
Quality. Good on you. Right, last question, and here's the weirdest one. So
All right.
here we go. Ready? You're asked by some measure of advanced being to walk naked through your local town. And if you
Oh,
do, you get the answer to any question you've ever had, no matter how big. So let's just say,
huh.
is there a God or anything like that? Would you do that walk?
Um, I don't think anybody's going to want to see that at this
No, they
age.
probably wouldn't, but would you want
So
the answer?
no, but I'll do it. Yeah, I'm game if I get, I mean, I don't know if they can answer a question like that. I don't know if there's any being that can do that. But if there is, and there's the answer, yeah, sure, I'd walk naked.
And the last question would be, what would that question that you would want answered be?
Oh, ooh, 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 ooh. Hmm. Wow, and that's not right there because I got a few of them.
Hmm.
Um, I guess it would be. I guess it would be. I would want to know the origin of this phenomenon. If it's us from the future, if it's some thing that we're actually manifesting, that is an evolutionary thing that's built into our DNA, if they're actually astronauts from other planets, or if it's God or something that we don't really, that it's, because I'll tell you, it's a question. I don't have the answer. People would love it if I could say this is aliens from Zeta Reticuli, but I can't give them that. I don't know.
Well, it's a lovely question, and I hope you get your answer without having to do that walk. And I seriously want it for myself.
I know.
As well.
I'm thinking of the Game of Thrones. Shame,
the walk of shame. That's right. Shame. Yeah, but I've got a good answer. I don't care. Right. So that is the end of the Koit Zone. Thank you for going through that with me, which leaves two final questions.
No problem.
What else do you like to do in your downtime away from music, and away from MUFON and stuff? Anything else you like to do?
I read a lot. I like to read books about the Beatles. I just read volume 2 of the Paul McCartney bio that came out. It was very interesting. It was fun. And so I read. I like to watch a good mystery, on television. My wife and I, we just watched, what was it called? Anyway, I mean, we'll watch a good mystery. We liked The Slow Horses. Was a wonderful program.
Yeah, I've heard that's got good recommendations, but I haven't watched it.
Very good. It's got like this dark comedic thing to it, very British, and you'd probably like it. It's sort of like Blackadder or something, but I liked it more. They're sort of the miscreants in MI6 that they call them the Slow Horses, and they're kind of put aside, but they realize that they're actually doing it right and that they are the best at the job. Very good show. I'm not going to give spoilers, but if you guys out there haven't seen, I'll
definitely have to put that on my list then. I know I have looked it up because it gets a lot of good reviews. It's just whether I commit to it. All right,
it is an excellent program.
Right, which leads us to
there's another season.
Well, I hope so. What are we on now? 3 or 4, isn't it, on that series?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Last question. What are you currently working on?
My book. And I'm going to have to go. I'm going to have to work it out with my co-workers at MUFON and stuff. I'm going to need about at least 3 weeks, and probably need to stay in a cabin and turn all devices off and just focus on it, because more times than not I start writing, and there's Fox News wanting me to give an assessment of their UFO video, or I'm training a new field investigator in this or that, and I just get so busy. And that book is wanted out there. People keep asking me, and it'd be nice to have something to inscribe when I speak at conferences and stuff. So, and I think my story, I think it'll be meaningful to some people that it's supposed to be meaningful to. So yeah, that's number one. That's my New Year's resolution. My wife and I are currently trying to figure out when I'm going to go and take off a little bit of time to hammer this out, because most of it's written. I just have to edit it down to a readable form.
Good. Well, I hope that comes to fruition and as soon as possible for you. Earl, thank you ever so much for coming on today. Some wonderful stories, lovely information. Thank you ever so much. Everyone, check out the links in the descriptions to Earl's sites, etc., etc. Go and check out his stuff. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Koit. It was a pleasure.
No worries. Bye-bye. To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.